Indema takala bakara tukthus sakan kin aha. And welcome to Shift+F1, a podcast about speedy race cars. Parentheses, perfect Arabic. That's an expression meaning, when the cow falls, many knives are drawn. Rob, the McLaren cow has stumbled, and the knives are being sharpened as we head into the final race of the season. I'm Drew Scanlon. Joining me, Rob Zachney. How are you, Rob?
You know, when F1 races are bad, they can be like Sunday destroying. Like they can be 2 hours of like, what did I just do with my morning?
And doubly so when there's a sprint also, just sitting there on your Saturday.
Oh God, there was a sprint.
If you're new to this... wait, you didn't watch the sprint?
No, I watched the sprint. I forgot.
Oh, okay.
Like just out with the other ear. That was also nothing.
Great. All right. Well, we're going to recap it all for you. We got to, such as it is a stacked show here. Perhaps the race itself not so dramatic in sprint, but dramatic consequences for the championship here. But we'll get into it. If you're new to this podcast, a very warm welcome. And if you are new to Formula One itself, we recommend listening to our preseason primer episode, which assumes no prior F1 knowledge and explains how the sport works and who everybody is. So if you'd like to go back and listen to that, it's episode 298. There's an entire 2025 season of races to then go listen to too if this is your first episode and you want to catch up. You could probably, conceivably catch up before the final race, but more likely be ready for the next season. 2026 is going to be interesting. This show would not be possible, though, without our audience over at patreon.com/shiftf1, where every month we release ad-free versions of this podcast early for patrons, along with bonus podcasts and videos exclusively for those patrons that cover racing documentaries and films, F1 video games, experiments with other racing series, and a lot of weird things. So if you would like to support the show and get access to all that fun stuff, head over to patreon.com/shiftf1 or click the link in the show notes. This month we reviewed... or I guess now, last month, in November, we reviewed 1968's The Love Bug, Herbie, a.k.a. Herbie. You know him, you love him. Rob, give us the elevator pitch on your feelings about Herbie. I really enjoyed our recording.
Yeah, I think we went in with low expectations, which always helps because what we remember is, what if there was a cute little sentient VW bug that had to teach a sort of a found family a lesson about life and racing? I didn't figure that would be... I remember liking it when I was a little kid, but I didn't figure it was going to be timeless. I certainly didn't think it would be as enjoyable as it is, but it turns out to be a really well-made, Disney film production from the 60s that has actually aged a lot better than its contemporaries. There's a lot of sand traps you think this movie's going to hit into. It doesn't. And as silly and goofy as the premise is, it's never too arch about it. It's knowing. It knows what it is. But it's also a very sincere film in a way that I found completely disarming. I think we were all unexpectedly quite taken with it.
Yeah, some surprising chops in drama and character work. Yeah, we had a good time. We haven't decided our December movie yet, but the people have spoken, Rob. I posited if we were to do another primer for a non-F1 series, which is something that we've done in the past for a lot of other series, as part of the Patreon offering. What would people want to see? And the people want IndyCar. They want us to revisit IndyCar ahead of the 2026 season because there's a lot of moving and shaking going on over there. So perhaps we will oblige in the new year. But until then, I do want to thank our title sponsor patrons, including Let's Margot Racing, E. Ching Wells, Dr. V, Don'tHireThisHorner.com, Papaya Rules, Matt and Harmony, Formula One, Deange Airways, Deange Grand Prix, It's a Me Ferrario, Petro States, Mojo Nixon, Get Rich or Die Ryan, Agave ATX, Cyphus Training, Turf SES, Michael Maves, Alien vs. Ecclestone, whoever wins, we lose. Cigarettes, telemetrydeck.com racing team, FTC, Tracy Syntax, Drew Stewart, Helmut Marco's driver's insurance. Steer clear, everyone. Bailey Foot, High Speed Low Drag, Abraham Getchell, Bunny Jerk, Snigs, HireThisWalker.com, Alex Goucher, Max Voltar Keyboards, Jeff Foster, Troy Stammer, William Rumpf, Lachlan the Maddened Man, Samurai Love Story, and Jason Kelly. Let's just jump right into it, Rob. The sprint. Everyone remembers the sprint. Everyone remembers the sprint grid. Here's how things lined up ahead of the 1/3 race distance event. Oscar Piastri on sprint pole, followed by George Russell and Lando Norris, who went over the gravel at the final turn in his Q3 second lap. Fernando Alonso lines up fourth, and Yuki Tsunoda in fifth, out-qualifying Max Verstappen, who had a rough time. He will line up sixth, bouncing in his car. Again, I think the previous round, he also had a rough time with the porpoising. Kimi Antonelli lines up seventh, followed by Carlos Sainz in the Williams. Charles Leclerc, the first of the Ferraris, and this is not the end of their woes for the season here, or for the race weekend, lining up in ninth for the sprint. Alex Albon, the other Williams, in 10th. Then Isaac Hadjar had a lap deleted that would have sent him to Q3, elevating Kimi Antonelli. So he'll line up 11th. Oliver Behrman 12th, Gabriel Bortoletto in 13th, Nico Hulkenberg 14th, Esteban Ocon 15th, and then Liam Lawson, Lance Stroll, Lewis Hamilton down in 18th. Big oof. Pierre Gasly in 19th, and Franco Colapinto 20th.
Everybody is so deeply maybe this is the other reason I didn't remember the sprint. I had to just delete my awareness, like my recollection of Lewis's post sprint qualifying reaction, because it's like we keep discovering new layers of Hamiltonian despair across this season, and the commentators are also talking about it. Like Brundle, after hearing that, was like, "Ooh, it just gets harder to listen to, doesn't it?" Because I think this season's obviously been awful. It's been a terrible year for him personally, what with losing a beloved pet. But ultimately, this is one of those confidence testing seasons that, or possibly confidence shattering. We're going to have to see, but there's a lot at stake for how this team is going to show up in 2026. But right now, Hamilton just sounds broken by his fortunes this season. The interview was trying to set him up with softballs. Anything you can learn from this season? Any sort of hopes? Anything good? And he just gives this one little answer. Weather's nice.
Oh, man. Yeah, the Ferraris really, just to preview here, did not do great at this round. Fred Vasseur, team principal at Ferrari, attributed it to an inability to compensate for the high tire pressures that the teams were having to run as a result of the track conditions. So we also mentioned last race. Oh boy, last episode, that for this weekend, the tires can go no further than 25 laps. That is a Qatar-only rule because there's a concern for the life of the tires, and they don't want to push it and have the tires explode. So what came with that was higher tire pressures, and that has a lot of impact on the setup. And Fred was basically like, we could not get it right.
And it's going to have a lot of impact on the racing. This is kind of they keep reverting to this rule about the tire pressures, which means it's another race where they've kind of forced a tire strategy, which is going to have a major impact on the race and to a degree the watchability of the race. But something Danny's brought up before with the circuit is this is a circuit that is heavily used for motorcycle racing. Mm-hmm. And it has that feel, right? It is all a flowing track with lots of medium speed corners, and it's a very abrasive surface. And then the tires are always max loading one side of the car or the other. So it's a very punishing track, but I think the other side effect is with corners like that, it is a track that's going to exaggerate issues with F1 cars following and getting dirty air. So, every year I go into this with hopes that like maybe this time will be different. But I think the sprint the sprint race kind of showed us what we were going to be in for this whole weekend.
Yeah. So why don't we just jump right into it? At the start here of the sprint, Piastri leads confidently into turn one. Norris and Russell get very close and maybe make contact as they jockey for second, but Russell keeps it into turn one. Tsunoda gets a great start and has the inside line behind Russell, making his way briefly past Norris in the turn, but then drops back and is soon passed by his teammate Verstappen. Perhaps not on merit. I think Yuki said going into this weekend, like, I'm just going to try to help Max here, parentheses, and see if I can preserve my seat at Red Bull. So Verstappen gets by quickly. Verstappen also had gotten by Alonso at the start. Looks like a certain side of the track, what would that be? The left side was better off of the line across the weekend. But yeah, Verstappen slots into fourth place. Further back, Leclerc having a rough time, going wide a couple of times, including into the gravel, loses 4 spots on the opening lap. Later on lap 11, he visits the gravel again, just understeering all over the place, which contributes a few corners later to a moment with Lawson, who has to go wide and overtake Leclerc off track. Lawson gives the place back, but Ferrari just really not looking great, starting with the sprint. Lap 13, Alonso dips into the gravel at the final turn, allowing Antonelli to close up and pass him with DRS for 6th place. Antonelli is battling Lewis Hamilton for 6th place in the Drivers' Championship, and if he beats him, it will be the first time Hamilton has ever finished outside of the top 6 in the Drivers' Championship in his career. And the last thing here, track limits rearing its head in this session. Tsunoda falling afoul in, again, the shortened distance here of the sprint. 17 laps, I think we had. Little unusual at this track since it's the entry to turn 10. They sort of swing wide to then hit the apex at as a tight an angle as they can. And in that wide swing, they sometimes are going outside the track. Tsunoda did it 4 times and was caught out, was handed a 5-second penalty. So at the line, Tsunoda drops behind Antonelli with the penalty, but I don't remember seeing this on the broadcast, which is that Antonelli also had a 5-second penalty, I think, for track limits. And so
that's why he didn't. Okay, so that's why the next day they were saying Tsunoda didn't end up losing a position because of the penalty.
Right, so Tsunoda did drop back, but Antonelli also dropped back, but he was more than 5 seconds ahead of Fernando Alonso behind him, so in the end, nothing really changed.
Yeah, I think this is, again, possibly because of the priority placed on motorcycle racing here. I think the curbs are pretty marginal in terms of what you can feel in the car. And so the drivers don't have a lot of feedback when they're dealing with track limit stuff. And as we know, they can't really see the corners super well just because they're seating position. So, yeah, it was a thing throughout every session, but particularly in that one corner where there's so much incentive to cut it as wide as possible.
Yeah, and though the sprint does, not give very many points, we are coming down to the wire here in the Drivers' Championship, so every point counts. Oscar Piastri taking home 8 with his sprint win, and then 7 for George Russell and 6 for Lando Norris. 5 points for Max Verstappen in 4th. 4 points for Yuki Tsunoda in 5th. 3 for Kimi Antonelli in 6th. 2 for Fernando Alonso in 7th. And 1 for Carlos Sainz, bringing it home in 8th. Behind him, we've got Isaac Hadjar, Alex Albon in 10th, Gabriel Bortoleto, Oliver Behrman, Charles Leclerc 13th, Liam Lawson 14th, Esteban Ocon 15th, followed by Nico Hulkenberg, Lewis Hamilton making up just 1 position from his 18th place on the grid. Pierre Gasly finishes 18th, followed by Lance Stroll and Franco Colapinto. And that is the sprint. And let's just roll right into it, Rob. The race. Here is the grid for the race. After qualifying, Oscar Piastri gets another pole position. This one, a real one, a race pole position. Lando Norris, again, had a misstep on his second lap, so opted to abort and thus did not improve. Max Verstappen will line up in third, and George Russell on the second row beside him. Kimi Antonelli will line up fifth, followed by Isaac Hadjar. Carlos Sainz again getting up there. Will start seventh. It was a weird one. He left the pits with some plastic on his tires. It looked like they were, you had not taken the the film after unboxing them off. You sliding all over the place. I think his team was fined for this, but no sporting penalty. Fernando Alonso lines up 8th, Pierre Gasly 9th, an Alpine ahead of both Ferraris. Charles Leclerc starting 10th, had a huge spin in Q3. Felt like, and the commentator said as much, that he was just trying to, put something together. But ultimately was at the bottom of the Q3 session, so he'll start 10th. In 11th, Nico Hulkenberg, followed by Liam Lawson, Oliver Behrman, Alex Albon, Yuki Tsunoda in 15th, Esteban Ocon. Lewis Hamilton, yet again, qualified 18th, but was elevated after Gabriel Bortoleto was penalized 5 positions for his contact with Stroll in Vegas. So Hamilton will be 17th, Stroll 18th, and Bortoleto 19th. Franco Colapinto at the pit lane start after modifications to his car. Okay. Rob, the start here. Piastri gets another decent start, but it is Verstappen who looks like he was shot out of a cannon and slots into second place at turn 1, ahead of Norris. Worth pointing out that Verstappen has to stay ahead of Norris to remain a championship contender. Norris, meanwhile, concealed the deal of the Drivers' Championship with a win here. Behind them, the 2 Mercedes cars duke it out with Antonelli coming out on top, running in 4th place behind Norris. And then it is Sainz, who had a great start from 7th, getting by Hadjar and Russell, and is now 5th. Poor Russell drops a position also to Alonso, who's up 2 spots in 6th. And again, Julian Palmer blaming the right side of the grid for being less grippy.
Wasn't Russell also talking once again about like his steering having an odd feel through this race, which I think he brought up last race as well, which does make me wonder. Again, we're at the end of the season. They're not rolling out a ton of upgrades. I think they're trying to avoid replacing as much of the cars as possible. Yeah. So I do wonder if there's sort of a chronic fault the steering on his car has developed. But either way, kind of a lackluster car for him on the day. Norris, I think at the start, to me, he's doing exactly what he should be doing, right? I think he was very pragmatic. He probably could have fought Max harder, but I think in his head, he's like, I just need to keep bringing these things home close. And the thing that could lose me this championship is taking myself out. And so I think he's making good, like, sound judgment calls at these moments. So, I think really the thing that this weekend the miscue was probably getting that quali lap wrong in Q3 and having to abort without time to go around again and give it another shot. But in terms of the race, the racing, I think he is just trying to be prudent in his decision making, and it's probably the right call. The only thing that could really go wrong is something unforeseen that could completely swap the order of the race around.
Indeed. I think going into this weekend, if he got in third place in every session, he would win the championship. So you're right. I think that leads a little more, gives you some wiggle room. All right, that's the start. We're going to take a quick break, and then we will be back with the rest of the Qatar Grand Prix. All right, Rob. Lap 2, as I previously said, Ferrari having a bad weekend. And here Leclerc is passed into turn 1 by Hülkenberg in the Sauber on the inside for 10th place. Pierre Gasly also having a rough time. He went into the gravel and is now dragging some element of his floor on the ground, throwing up a whole bunch of sparks. And now would be a good time to remind you that tires in this race are limited to 25 laps. And because we have a 57-lap race, the soonest that one could pit and still only have to do 2 pit stops is thus lap 7. Right on cue, Nico Hülkenberg tries to go around the somewhat compromised Gasly, who understeers into him and spins Hülkenberg off of the track, who loses his right rear tire and obliterates a styrofoam brake marker, bringing out the safety car and serving up a seemingly opportune moment for everyone to come in for a cheap pit stop.
Okay, quick thing. The Hülkenberg Gasly incident, I think, like, classic racing incident, right? Like, I do not feel like there was any fault to really be assigned there. It's close racing side by side, but there wasn't much margin for error. I think it was just two drivers battling for position. It's just, it's dicey, especially in these cars. And as you pointed out, like, Gasly may have been a bit compromised. But my question for you at this point is, because of the math, as you just alluded to, on the one hand, we've had our frustrations with sort of mandated pit stops, and like we saw that kind of wrecked Monaco and made that really uninteresting. But it gives you certainty, especially with like the stint length that has been predetermined by Pirelli. And so my question to you is there any defense you can make of what McLaren does at this juncture with keeping both cars on a strategy that is going to require something else to happen for it to pay off?
Yeah, so everyone comes into pit except for both McLaren cars. And you do see this sometimes with something like this happens, and a team will make a gamble and go for the counter strategy, right? What's perplexing to me about McLaren not pitting is that that seems like a move you would do if you were coming from behind, or if you were, like, again, taking a gamble here. But much like Norris here, I think if you just make the conservative calls, you're going to win the championship. So that was a weird one to me. I think you are compromised a little bit in that Piastri is in first, and therefore you are the first one to make the call, and then everyone else can react to you. Yes. So Piastri, I can maybe understand them not pitting him. And what they said during the race is, when Lando asked, like, hey, why didn't we pit? They said we wanted to basically retain flexibility. Because if once, you pit on lap 7, as we said, that's locking you into your second pit stop must be on lap 32.
Well, hang on. They didn't just say we want to retain flexibility. They said, Lando, they have given away all their flexibility for the rest of this race. It was the most like, don't worry, big guy. We got them right where we want them, in the lead on an optimal tire strategy.
Yes. Yeah. So that said, why then didn't you pit Norris? Because you can see Max Verstappen pitting. Why not just follow him? Because that's the I guess at this point it's not the real battle, because at this point not Norris and Piastri are very close, but Norris is the one leading. And so if you want to take the conservative choice to ensure that your driver wins the drivers' championship, why not then follow the closest contender and just do the same thing so that he can't do something else crazy and jump you? That is the second perplexing part of this. And I again, might be complicated by the fact that McLaren, are stridently sticking with, we do everything the same for every driver.
I think if there is like I have I actually like that they've generally had this policy of like let them race, but I do feel like part of the deer in the headlights of this moment is that the minute you put these guys on opposite strategies, even though as from just like the team dynamic in this situation, usually you'd split strategies at this juncture, if not both pit, right? Like, but you would certainly like at least want to hedge. If you want to maintain the track position, you get someone else on that other strategy. But as we've seen, when that has like cut against one of their drivers, it has led them to make team orders or sort of hem and haw about what they ought to do. And I don't want to lose sight of this. They don't have a ton of time to make this decision. Like they are out there, in the front of the race. The entry line is coming up fast. You don't have all day to make this call. But you'd like to maybe see. Maybe there's not enough time to leave it to the drivers, but to me it sort of seems like Piastri gets first crack at strategy. If this should have been we could game this out pretty clearly. The math has worked out perfectly. Where if this happens at this juncture of the race, you want to pit, and so that is probably you offer Piastri that option. And if he says no, it's Norris's call to stay on same strategy as Oscar or do something different. And instead they kind of freeze both drivers into holding position. Not advantaging either of them against each other. I also think maybe, with good reason, McLaren is running scared of a double stack.
Yeah, you've got that, and you've also got, if everyone is pitting at the same time, a lot of traffic in the pit. So
which could really hammer Norris as the second guy in the box.
Yeah. So I think the delta here between a safety car pit stop and a green pit stop is like 4 or 5 seconds. So that's how much you're actually saving by pitting under a pit stop, which could easily be undone by both of those things.
I don't think the other thing is this. I don't know what the history of safety cars is here. But just like looking at the track, it's a lot of it's a pretty standard like modern desert track for F1, which means tons of runoff, not a ton of things that are going to generate safety cars unless you have a thing like two cars getting into each other and, leaving a huge debris field or disabling one on the track. But like once the race is underway, a lot of the stuff that's likely to happen, it's not a place where you're going to have someone like easily get stuck into a wall. There's lots of room to, pull the car off or limp back to the pits. And so to me, it doesn't feel like a track where you are reasonably saying, well, hang on, this is the first of probably a couple or a few safety cars over this race. I don't know that Qatar has that reputation. I don't know the stats, but just like eyeballing it, I don't know that's a good bet. As we see in this race, it obviously didn't pan out. But it just seemed like such a long shot to be saying that like we're retaining this flexibility, but for what? Like what twists do you expect to have happen here along the way that are good bets at this point to make up for the fact that you just ceded this track position and the strategy advantage?
Yeah, I guess they also have confidence that they can pass cars on track, because they would have to, because by virtue of them, everyone else getting a cheaper pit stop, they'll inevitably come out behind a number of cars and have to pass them on track.
Except we have the sprint race. The one thing you can say is like overtaking was not on this track. So like that is the other thing that you've seen is like there is a DRS train nightmare that is happening throughout this weekend. So, I have some like obviously I've recorded a lot of stream tape on me and my decisions that I make playing Motorsport Manager that everyone can sort of point and laugh. Like I fuck these things up all the time. But the thing is also like some asshole playing a game, right? I'm not sitting there. I have an entire week to think about this exact scenario. 25 lap stints, 57 lap race. What could conceivably happen? Like this was something you could have gamed out pretty early, and it was just nauseating. Like your stomach just dropped because it was like, they have really stuck their head in the lion's mouth. I think Ocon stayed out, and for a minute I was at least hoping, because that's the other thing, right? I think they're assuming some people are going to take track position, and so the people who stop they'll be the ones getting caught in those DRS trains behind hungry midfield drivers who are just trying to like hold on to this position. So like it's a good thing we're not going to be caught up in that. But nobody makes that decision. Everyone comes in. Ocon, I think, stays out, and maybe they were thinking along those terms. Except Ocon had picked up a penalty for God, I can't remember what the infraction was. Was it a jump start? Was it a starting procedure violation?
Oh, I think it was a jump start. Yeah.
But either way, so he picked up a penalty. So he comes around. He's in third place. He pulls in the pits to serve his penalty. By the way, it looks like they failed to do that correctly, or at least they thought he did. They might have waved off the second penalty, but his race gets completely blown out of the water. So the only other thing they could have hoped is that the field would split on strategy, and you would have like a wedge of like chancers basically between you and Max. And that didn't happen at all. It's like Hamilton lining up alone on the grid for the restart.
Yeah. So what McLaren basically has to do from here is go all out and build a gap that they can slot into when they do pit, because they really don't want to come out when they pit in the middle of a DRS train, which will make it even harder to pass. The trouble is that even if they do that, they still have to pass the likes of Verstappen and Antonelli on a track that isn't exactly conducive to passing. And one more thing here is that because it's a sprint weekend, they didn't get a lot of hard tire running, and so that's kind of another variable that they're not really sure about. But then again, why make the risky call? Or maybe they thought that staying out was the conservative call. We do have some quotes here after the race. McLaren CEO Zach Brown saying, "We made the wrong decision. Our evaluation of if a safety car came out on that lap was clearly incorrect." And team principal Andrea Stella says, "The thinking was that traffic might have been a consideration. In reality, traffic was not an element because everyone decided to pit. We wanted to have enough flexibility in the race in case of another safety car, which would have paid off very well, but there was no other safety car." So we do get going again on lap 11, Piastri and Norris leading the field and immediately trying to build that gap. They are also aided by Alonso, who acts like a cork in the bottle for some 13 other cars until Piastri does come in for new tires on lap 25 and Norris one lap later. And so when they do rejoin, they are in fourth and fifth, respectively, behind the leaders Verstappen, Sainz, and Antonelli. So now it is up to the McLarens to pass as many of those guys on track as they can so that they can try to make up the time for the next offset pit stop that they will have to make. Lap 30, Piastri does his part by getting by Antonelli with a decisive move down the inside of turn 1 with the aid of DRS and those new tires. Shortly thereafter, lap 32, Verstappen comes in for his second stop, followed by a flurry of others, as we noted. Poor Behrman has some issue where he, I guess, tries to drive off without all his wheels on or something, or the jack has still got him up in the air. That earns him I think a 10-second stop go, which I don't remember during the race, but until that point, he was doing all right in 10th place.
I mean, I don't remember a ton from this stage of the race because at a certain point, I just entered a fugue state. Just watching the cars go around. MK turned to me midway through and she's like, "I've never seen a race with stakes this incredibly high that is this boring." Which was like you couldn't look away because the championship is on the line. You know what I mean? Like on the one hand, it's kind of like a nail biter in terms of like what could happen and how quickly this thing could swing away. But on the other hand, holy shit, it's a processional.
Lap 37, Norris is unable to pass anyone before the second round of pit stops, which makes his life harder by losing a second after his trip into the
pit
gravel.
crew will get it back for him.
Sure, oh yeah. Asking his team after that to check the car for damage. A few laps later on lap 40, Piastri does something similar, both having to make massive corrections coming out of the gravel to avoid a spin. Not avoiding a spin is Fernando Alonso on lap 32, who spins on his own and loses 2 positions. And lap 43 is when Piastri comes in for his second stop, and it is the hard tire for him, which seems like a curious move since he's got some overtaking to do, but perhaps McLaren is just playing it extra safe.
Well, I remember they talked about this too. I don't know what the exact how the allocations all worked out, but I do know that like the broadcast was talking about between the quality sessions and the sprint race, they had burned through a ton of their tire allocations. And so remember, 25 laps, overall life of the tire. So if you're bringing out a tire that's been used before, you're still going to have to, when that tire hits lap 25, you still got to come in. So they might have just been forced to go onto the hard because, you know, they didn't have something else that could go to the end.
True. Piastri nets out in second after the pit stop from the lead, but Norris goes from second on track to fifth with his pit stop, and then sets after Antonelli.
Well, Piastri won the pit stop lottery. He got a 1.8 second stop, which is wildly fast. Norris coming in like 2 laps later, he rolls snake eyes. He gets a 2.7 second stop, and that cost him the position on the track, I believe.
Okay.
So like it is again like bad to worse at this point, and now, you know, now we're in worst possible outcome territory.
Yeah. So, and with 1 lap to go, it seems like Norris is just not going to get it. But Hadjar gets a puncture. Drops out from 6th place, unfortunate for him. But fortunately for Norris, this does not trigger a safety car. So he can continue chasing down Antonelli. With 1 lap to go, he is getting closer. And maybe, I don't know, this is maybe overblowing it, but it's sort of like a is that Glock moment without quite as much intensity. But Antonelli goes wide at turn 11 and allows Norris through into 4th place. Plenty of conspiracy theories around this one. Even
starting from Red Bull.
Red Bull team members, yes. During the race, Verstappen's engineer, Giampiero Lambiase, says, looks like he just pulled over and let Norris through. Antonelli, of course, says he just made a mistake. Why would he do that? That doesn't make any sense. And apparently, Red Bull's Helmut Marko told Sky Germany, quote, it was too obvious that he had waved past Norris. And according to the-race.com, Mercedes says that they cataloged over 1,000 abusive messages to Antonelli as a result. So cool team you got there. Cool fans.
There's layers to this that suck. First of all, it's just like I think it's kind of silly of GP to be like, he kind of sounds like a guy watching the match on TV in a bar. You just let him by, and it's like, man, you have a job. Like come on. But you know, obviously, it's not a lot to do with the stage of the race. And again, what we saw on the feed. Missing the part where Antonelli screws up the corner, it does look like he's pulled off, as if he's letting someone through on a quali lap. And then the broadcast returned to that moment a couple laps later, and we saw the full incident, which was Antonelli damn near losing the car and having to recover, and he's a sitting duck to Norris, who doesn't have a mistake, and he just whips past. Marco, you know, I mean. There's a line in the great Robert Redford movie, Quiz Show, where they're talking about this whistleblower about the quiz show, where he's like, that guy has to be pulled away from the spotlight with his teeth marks still on it. That is Helmut Marko. He is always going to be racing to a microphone. But the other part of this that I hate about this era of racing is that it's not in this era of racing. It's the online environment. Mm. We live at a time of horrible toxicity and just easy access to harassing like public figures. But also in a weird way, there's a dynamic where the teams are also like highlighting the abuse to point fingers back at other teams. And so it turns into a thing where it turns into another like Toto Wolff and Red Bull leadership slap fight in some ways, where it's like, well, look what your fans did, look what your shitty fans did, and that's valid to an extent. You have to protect Antonelli, especially given how young he is, but at the same time, there is this like dynamic of there is such endemic harassment in the sport around these fan bases that are quick to mobilize, that it feels like the teams are also turning that into a cudgel to wage the same kind of battle about reputations and behavior, like who's a classy competitor and who's not, rather than sort of paying attention to the chief issue here, which is that the nature of F1 fandom has changed in the social media era and become way shittier than it ever has before. It's become, it's got a lot of characteristics of like celebrity stan culture, and it's incredibly gross.
Yep. Solution: don't be on social media.
Don't do it.
Just don't do it. Not even once. Norris trying to chase down Sainz then for third, but time runs out. And
he was hauling ass, though. He was bringing him in. I was like, I was looking at the in-car, and I was like, oh, my God. Is he going to do... He just ran out of track, but it felt like one more lap.
Don't do that to Carlos. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I think maybe one and a half laps more, you would have had him. But we end like this. Max Verstappen wins the Qatar Grand Prix, jumps Piastri in the Drivers' Championship, now sits in second, just 12 points behind Norris as we head into the final round. If he wins the championship, he will have McLaren to thank, considering this race's strategy and last race's double DQ. Oscar Piastri comes home second, and Carlos Sainz third. And with that, seals fifth place for Williams in the Constructors' Championship, their best finish in a decade. Lando Norris finishes fourth.
Sainz continues to feast on Albon's spirit energy.
Just like we were saying with like, now the pendulum has, the Norris Piastri pendulum is swinging back and forth. Sainz had a rough start to the year, and now it seems like he is really on top of that car. Looking forward to 2026 with Williams. Lando Norris comes home fourth, followed by Kimi Antonelli in fifth. Then we've got George Russell sixth, Fernando Alonso in seventh. Charles Leclerc salvages an eighth place. Liam Lawson ninth, and Yuki Tsunoda 10th. Behind them, we've got Alex Albon in 11th. Lewis Hamilton gets up to 12th. Gabriel Bortoleto 13th. Franco Colapinto 14th. Esteban Ocon 15th. Then Pierre Gasly 16th. And the DNFs of Lance Stroll, Isaac Hadjar, Oliver Behrman, and Nico Hülkenberg. And that was Qatar, Rob. Let me run down the championship standings here while we're talking about it. As we head into Abu Dhabi, Lando Norris still on top, again by 12 points. Max Verstappen having moved up to second place, and Oscar Piastri down to third. Piastri is only 4 points back from Verstappen, so a total of 16 away from the championship. That means anything can happen in Formula One, and it usually does. George Russell fourth, Charles Leclerc currently fifth, and Lewis Hamilton currently sixth. Kimi Antonelli just 2 points behind Hamilton in seventh place. Alex Albon is in eighth. Carlos Sainz, with his third place, jumps 2 spots in the Drivers' Championship. He is now 9 points back from his teammate Albon in ninth place. Isaac Hadjar bumped down a spot to 10th, and Nico Hülkenberg down a spot to 11th. He's just 2 points back from Hadjar. And Fernando Alonso moves up a place, only 1 point behind Hülkenberg. Behrman is now in 13th. Liam Lawson 14th. Yuki Tsunoda moves up 2 spots to 15th place. Esteban Ocon is in 16th, Lance Stroll 17th, Pierre Gasly 18th, Gabriel Bortoleto is 19th, Franco Colapinto in 20th, and Jack Doohan, technically still on the board with 0 points in 21st. All right, in the Constructors' Championship, McLaren is, of course, on top with 800 points. Oh my God, 800 points. Mercedes is in second with 459. I know. Red Bull is in third They're 33 points back, and Ferrari is 44 points back in fourth. So those look fairly static to me, but again, anything can happen. Williams is in fifth, having secured that spot mathematically. Racing Bulls is in sixth. Aston Martin moved up a spot after Qatar and is now in seventh with 80 points, 7 points ahead of Gene Haas team in eighth. Sauber is in ninth, and Alpine in 10th. All right, before we do our pre-race for Abu Dhabi, some news here, Rob. We had some stories about Christian Horner. Where is he going to land? He's talking with Aston Martin. Maybe he's landing here. Nope. Instead, curveball, Adrian Newey is the new team principal at Aston Martin. You may know him. He was for a long time Red Bull's chief aerodynamicist, the guy what made the car good. Now
wrote the book on it.
He did indeed. Adrian Newey's How to Build a Car in stores now. He's now the team principal, and it's a weird move and made even weirder by some of the quotes he has said as a result of this. But first, Rob, your impressions about this news.
So when we talked about the Horner thing, our first question was like, where's Newey in all this, right? Because our understanding had been Newey was kind of ready to be shot of Red Bull, and that also means be clear of Horner. So we didn't know what the status of their relationship was, but if they were considering Horner, maybe that meant that they actually were more ride or die for each other than we thought. But either way, what Newey thought this was going to be the whole key to this, because they broke the bank to bring Newey into Aston Martin and give him the brief of like not only designing the new car, but also just like whipping the entire technical side and infrastructure of that team into shape. So the notion you would bring in another control freak to do that was always a little bit like odd. But the stories, seemed that was a really strong rumor. But Horner was on a short list with like other big names and proven principles. So I don't know how much of it was just did someone push that list? Was Horner's camp trying to promote the story? I have no idea, but I was surprised. What Newey's taking on is a tremendous amount of work, right? Like we literally just said Horner was the last of the like end-to-end control. The Bill Belichick of the team. There's no aspect of this team's function I don't touch.
Right.
Newey is now that guy.
Yeah, well, not to hear him tell it. So this is part of what's weird. So former boss Andy Cowell, who was sort of the architect in many ways of the Mercedes dominance of the sort of previous era, he has been shifted to basically like to focus on the relationship between the team and the incoming Honda power unit to make sure all of that works well and is smooth. It's basically the role he had at Mercedes. And so the quote here from Newey is, with that in mind, to be perfectly honest, it became very evident, this is from the race, with the challenge of the 2026 power unit and Andy's skill set in terms of helping the three-way relationship between Honda, Aramco, who is their fuel sponsor and provider, and ourselves, it is absolutely his skill set. So he very magnanimously volunteered to be heavily involved in that through the first part of 2026. That kind of left an okay, who's going to be team principal. And since I'm going to be doing all the early races anyway, it doesn't actually particularly change my workload because I'm there anyway. I may as well pick up that bit.
Okay, so I think we've both seen the interview that Newey did with a High Performance Podcast. You read his book. This is a guy who also seemed to really have some formative experiences that or lessons he took away from working with like the likes of Ron Dennis. Mm-hmm. And he is not that type of leader, as far as we can tell. Sort of I want to be the Steve Jobs of racing. So I could see this being a thing where he is not going to be a team principal in the way we frequently mean it, but
Yeah.
at this stage of the team's development, with so many moving parts for the infrastructure and just like building the institution of the team, that he has to take it on for a while. I could see that, and then possibly the race day tactic stuff he ends up handing off a bit more as the season goes on. But also, it's not my experience that people, when given power, tend to easily yield it, no matter who they are. And the thing I wondered here is that you might think I don't want to be the person in charge. I don't want to run this whole thing. I don't want that responsibility. That becomes a real different prospect when you're handed a short list of people to basically like, here's the person we'd be promoting over you or into a peer role. And I do wonder if Nui, at this stage of his career, after a life spent working with people who are probably less capable, did he like decide, shit, I better take this role up or else?
We have a correspondent dialing in here. I believe his name is Danny O'Dwyer. I'm seeing on the screen here. Do you have a comment on Adrian Newey becoming the team principal of Aston Martin?
Folks, and Danny's in Ireland for a funeral. I can't believe you're doing this. Actually, I can see mortars in the background. There's is that a headstone? My goodness, this is
from the wake. No, yes, I am over here because my aunt and godmother is on her deathbed, but they turned off her machines on Sunday, and she is still kicking. So she is.
Oh my gosh!
I hope I am made out of the same stuff as her because we suspect the end is not too far away, but I flew over. You know, I really did not want to miss this podcast, as you can see with me dialing in mid episode, but I arrived this morning and got to see her. You know, she's not aware of much or anything, but I got to see my siblings and stuff, and I'm going to be in Ireland for a lot longer this Christmas than I had planned to.
Okay.
Which also means that I get to watch the final race of the year on European time, which is
of course,
a blessing in its own way. But yeah, I felt when I messaged you, Drew, I felt really bad about missing this podcast because I was flying in here. But then I just wanted to jump on because what a crazy situation we're in for the rest of the year. But when it comes to Newey, I can stick around for a little while. So I'll
okay,
just
great.
hang out.
Because I actually have to go
Drew has
in a
to
few
tag
minutes.
out. Yeah.
So let me. Yeah. Right. So let me instead of condensing the rest of this pod, this is great. So do you want to just kind of tie off the last bit here of this Adrian Newey news? My read of this is that, like, as you said, Rob, we're compartmentalizing it. Like it's almost like Cowell he's called now the chief strategy officer, so he's got strategy and also like the coordination of all the car stuff. It may just be, in my hypothesis, that Newey is like the decider, because they also let go like 7 people from the aerodynamics team here, which leads me to believe that, like, any conflict we had, let's just remove anyone who is not Adrian Newey, and then we won't have any conflict.
Imagine how shitty you'd feel if you're an aerodynamicist and Adrian Newey comes along and fires your ass.
Oh my god! Yeah.
Like, it is the ultimate, like, you know nothing of my work type situation where it's like, I'm sorry, I'm the greatest aerodynamicist in F1 history, and I think you're bad at this.
Yeah. So the other thing is, like, well, what does this mean for Horner? Lawrence Stroll apparently told the Aston Martin staff, in reference to, this is again from the race, stories that the team was entertaining hiring Horner, quote, "That is absolutely not happening and is not true."
Oh, wow.
So whether that means only for the team principal role, or whether, because the rumor was also that, like, Horner's going to get in monetarily on this too, like buy part of the team. Still unclear. We guess we won't really know until Horner does land somewhere. But kind of weird stuff going on at Aston Martin, but it will be interesting. That is for sure.
MK asked this question. I don't know if is Newey the first time an aerodynamicist has headed up a team?
I mean, a lot of like the technical guys, like Mattia Binotto was like the technical car guy, or like the engine guy. Yeah, I can't.
Ron Dennis was a mechanic and chassis guy.
So was Eddie Jordan was too, wasn't he?
Patrick Head was a chassis engineer. But I was sort of looking at this, like, for as critical as Aero has been, I don't know that I can think of a team principal from the engineering side who's been an Aero guy.
When I guess also did aerodynamics as its own sort of pillar within the team sort of emerge, because I feel like that is a turn of the millennium kind of thing. You know what I mean?
I mean, you would argue it probably starts with Newey at Williams almost, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, that is the funny thing is Newey's career is him being a hired gun by these technical team principals to go bolster the Aero side of the operation, but he's never placed in charge. He's just handed the Aero brief.
Before that, it was just engineers sticking fans and multiple wings on the backs of their cars.
God, those were
crossing their fingers.
Can you imagine? Oh my God, the soapbox derby era of early Aero.
I'm gonna do something weird here. I'm gonna finish off my duties of the pod, and then I'm gonna throw it back for the other piece of news here. How about that? Is that
sure?
Right?
Yeah.
All right. So
did you start early? Because you're
yes.
It seems like you're okay. I was wondering. I was like, okay. I missed the race stuff. You're already in the news. Okay, go ahead.
We're already in the news. Yep. But we do have the track walk still to come. So track walk for Abu Dhabi yet to come. But my ratings for the past 3 years have been a 2 out of 4. So Abu Dhabi, not always the most exciting race. In terms of the form book, though, Charles Leclerc tends to do well here, as does Carlos Sainz and Yuki Tsunoda. Not doing so well, Fernando Alonso, Pierre Gasly. And statistically, McLaren. So that'll be interesting. Weather-wise, you go ahead.
Bit of a change this year in that the past couple of years have also been basically, damp squibs as a, for the championship. There's been some points on offer for sure, right. But it's, it's not been a fight for the title.
Not since 2021.
Yeah. Across the weekend, we're looking at fairly warm temperatures. So 84 degrees on qualifying day, or 29 Celsius, and pretty much the same on race day. No precipitation, and wind looks to be a maximum of 11 miles an hour, 18 kilometers an hour, which could have some bearing on aerodynamics. We went down the drivers' standings, but if you'd like to join the standings yourself, you can do so using the link in the show notes to join our official Shift+F1 Fantasy League for the final race of the season. Here is the top 3 from Qatar. In third, Salt Box. In second, Dress Zone. And in first, Team Vince 3. But overall, the podium looks like this. Unbelievably, Team Vince 3 also has vaulted onto the overall podium.
Wow.
Along with, in second, The Fast of Us 2025. And in first, F1 Band, my team name. Let's see. We'll get to email. So another kind of programming note, we're going to have a post show for Abu Dhabi, but then the following week we'll do kind of a end of year wrap up. So we'll have after this one 2 more episodes, and that'll also be a time to send in emails. Danny, again, we're kind of messing with the schedule here, but that's us around the internet. You want to check it around the world real quick?
It's around the world, yeah.
We've just got a little bit here because racing.
He's in the next room working, being like, "What is he doing?"
Not a lot of racing in the winter time. Formula 2, though, will be joining Formula 1 at Yas Marina Circuit. And Formula E is in Sao Paulo for the Sao Paulo E-Prix this weekend. That's right. All right. That is all my duties. I'm going to hand it back to you. Oh, I'm sorry. We also have Formula 1 this weekend. Free Practice 1 kicks off at 4:30 a.m. Eastern Time on ESPN2, followed by Free Practice 2 at 8 a.m. Eastern on ESPNU. Saturday, December 6th, Free Practice 3 is at 5:30 a.m. Eastern on ESPN2, followed by Qualifying at 9 a.m. Eastern on ESPN2. The race, everyone, the final race of the season, December 7th at 8 a.m. Just getting choked up. at 8 a.m. Eastern Time on ESPN. That is it for the race around the world. That is it for the form book, the weather, the fantasy standings, and that is it for me. Yes, and now let us throw it back to Rob. I actually don't. I'm signed in as the host here, Danny, so I'm not going to stop because I don't want to stop the recording. I'm just going to mute my mic and camera. How about that?
Okay, sounds good. I hope you're having a good time over there.
Thank you. Yes,
doing whatever it is you do in the privacy of your office.
Just an appointment. All right. Thank you, everyone. I'll see you all next week, and hand it back to Danny and Rob to finish things out.
Sweet. Rob, was it just going to be you on your own, buddy?
No, we were going to rush through the end of this podcast.
Oh, okay.
And Drew is going to be totally screwed in terms of his ability to get out on time. So he was about to take one for the team. But fortunately, you're here.
All right.
So the other bit of news, I don't think, obviously, this will probably be confirmed by the time you're hearing it, because that is what always happens with this podcast and F1 announcements. But the augurs are not good for Yuki Tsunoda at Red Bull. Multiple outlets are reporting that Isaac Hadjar is confirmed for the team, the second seat next year, and Tsunoda will not be getting demoted to Racing Bulls. He will simply be out, and his time in F1 will likely be over. Unfortunate, but also we've never seen it.
Yeah, this story it's just like history repeating itself, and it's becoming more and more, I don't know if it's frustrating or just like it's pathetic. I hope next year's cars with their new regs solve this issue at Red Bull to a certain degree, but like nothing about this makes me happy, because I'm thinking, okay, Yuki did really well in the Racing Bulls. In fairness, Isaac Hadjar and Liam Lawson have also done quite well in them this season, but I don't need Isaac being their next sacrificial lamb either. Like, I don't want the same thing to happen to him.
He looks really good.
He does.
He looks like an excellent driver. Now, my thinking is, I didn't mention this during the show, but it was something I did mean to come back to. They were talking at a certain point in this race about, I was listening to the F1 TV broadcast, and I think it was Julian Palmer talking about how both Leclerc and Hamilton are really struggling with the way Ferrari's tried to eke performance out of this thing. They've to get max performance, Ferrari has to go with a really twitchy, high oversteer setup, and both drivers have asked that to be dialed back to make the car more controllable, but it's made the car less competitive as well. And it occurred to me at a certain point that, like, but Max could drive the shit out of that Ferrari.
Yeah.
Like, he loves snap oversteer and sort of effortlessly recovers those cars. And I do wonder if we're going to find that in this ground effect era, that is a perfect match of what is optimal for the car and what Max's sort of default driving style is. And it wouldn't surprise me if some of the dynamics we've seen this past few years kind of ease off with the change in technical regulations. That I don't think Max will stop being a superb driver, but the delta between him and whoever is in the second seat might diminish because, like, optimal F1 car setup might not be as punishing for people who are not Max Verstappen next year. That is my hope, because I do think Isaac is too good a driver to flush down the same rat hole that they shoved Albon, Gasly, like guys who've proven that they can do this.
Yeah, and I the flip side of the coin, I guess, is that this car is the car that enabled Max to get back into the title contention in a year that 4 months ago would have been laughable to say. I guess the issue I have with Isaac in particular is that he is younger, and he is also a driver that we've seen be maybe a bit more fragile emotionally, and I he's had a great run, and he has had he's had some dodgy races. Obviously at the start of the season he had a terrible start, but I would worry about him if he got on a run of bad form or a run of unimpressive weekends, what that would do to someone like him, as opposed to Yuki, who has sort of gone through some of the fire over the past few years, has had teammates that he's had to, fight against and teammates he's got on really well with, but he evolved a lot and matured a lot in those intervening years. Not that it made much of a difference either way, unfortunately, for him.
Yeah, he outlasted a lot of teammates, got his promotion into Red Bull, and suffered the same fate. Like I don't think it was as disastrous as like late era Checo Perez, but it just hasn't been there. And I think at a certain point, like they do want to see what they've got the potential for here with Isaac Hadjar. So
what do you think about Lawson then? Because like if Lawson doesn't make the step up, is that him also taking a step out? Because he's not necessarily a draw. I mean, they can keep him there, but like if I was Lawson and I wasn't getting the step up, I'd be quickly trying to find another team.
The rumor is that Lawson stands a good chance of remaining. I think there's not a lot, I think, in terms of performance to separate them, but I think the thing you'd argue is that with Yuki, you've got a ton of game tape that you've seen. And so, you haven't seen, at this point, like it's kind of known quantity, and you just haven't seen enough upside to justify like continuing to see what you've got.
Yeah, you've
Lawson,
seen the ceiling on it, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, and Lawson, I will say, like, actually showed a lot of resilience this year. Like talk about like psychological kicks in the teeth. Him being booted out of Red Bull like immediately, and then rallying from that was kind of impressive. So I think him pairing with Lindblad, who's the expected second Racing Bulls driver, I think that makes all the sense in the world. And we'll see where Yuki goes. There's some coverage I've seen that he does still have a connection with Honda that might help him land a seat somewhere. But at the start of the season, we were talking about people close to the Honda like racing program have sort of said that he is in a put up or shut up phase of his career, and Honda's going to stop putting his thumb on the scale to promote him. There's other Japanese drivers who are part of those programs that they would probably like to move on to as well. So I think Yuki may be out of chances in F1 and might be poised for that turn in endurance, sports car racing, endurance racing. Perfectly great places to wind up as a driver. I think there's nothing here. You haven't seen anything from Yuki that says he's an unfit driver. He's just not quite good enough to sort of hang at the top of F1. So that's going to be all she wrote. Speaking of all she wrote, we're going for a title decider at Abu Dhabi. So we can split track walk duties.
Sure.
Dan, what we got here is a $1.3 billion Tilkedrome. With a checkered history, just by virtue of where it sits in the season, it is a place where a lot of teams have watched their dreams turn to ash. Ferrari and Alonso, arguably throwing away a championship in 2010. There, Hamilton trying to back Nico Rosberg into Sebastian Vettel in 2016 in the hopes that he could sort of steal the championship. Rosberg finishing his race and deciding that was it for him in F1. And then obviously, 2021, Michael Massey's selective, field clearing. For a finish under green. But despite those memorable moments, I don't think it's been a great track for a lot of racing. They've modified it. They got rid of a chicane heading into the big hairpin, setting up the run down the straight. Didn't make a ton of difference.
They did it on the back end as well. There used to be a chicane at the end of the second straight as well, which is now a faster turn. And
I don't think it has really made a ton of difference to the racing action. In terms of places where you see overtaking opportunities, there's that left right hander. I think that's what, like turns 3 and 4. You see a lot of action
in the first
there.
laps, yeah. And then obviously the end of the DRS straight, and then to a certain degree, there's a bit more on the second straight now. Maybe a bit less actually. Sorry, because it used to be a much harder braking zone. Sorry. Yeah, and you used to get some people trying to try it down into that chicane they removed. Maybe that's turn 5, 6. But now, because it's a fast turn, I mean, if you're on the right tires, ultimately that is where Max did it on Lewis, and then was able to defend going down the DRS straight.
But that required a very artificial difference in tires too. Like,
yeah, and also was DRS open? I don't know if it was, because back
no,
then
it wouldn't have been
because
it was
right?
Yeah, they wouldn't have been able to right then.
Yeah,
but Lewis's tires were shot as it was. So I don't think I understand why F1 likes this as an end of season venue. It is basically an amusement park for well-heeled yacht and racing enthusiasts, right?
Yes.
This is sort of a Monaco of the middle, a very astroturfed Monaco of the Middle East. And so I think it's a great place for, sponsor meetups and meeting up with the VIPs that make F1 possible. But in terms of great venues for a title decider,
No.
it's kind of an anonymous track.
We should have Interlagos again at the end of the season. It was such a great it's
Track
a great
always brings
circuit.
it.
Yeah, and also like the weather there. You're never going to get acclimate weather in Abu Dhabi. It's
And but they like that too, because you get the iconic sunset shots of Abu Dhabi, and it's this is the equivalent of these tracks are the F1 equivalent of like dome arenas in football, right. Where it's like, oh, it's better to an extent as like a cushy experience for your high paying fans, but in terms of the action on the pitch, it's a much more interesting sport if like weather can happen.
Totally.
You're dealing with the elements, and Abu Dhabi is really sort of designed to take that out of the equation. So Danny, you missed a lot of our conversation about the race itself, but this is a good place to sort of crack that back open. Against all odds now, we have a 3-way battle here for the title. Piastri's kind of got a long shot, way to still win this, but given how things played out, like McLaren brought Max back into this thing in a really good position.
Yeah, I don't know what you guys said about the pit stop stuff. And I know there's been a lot of scuttlebutt and a lot of devil's advocate or hindsight thinking about it. In real time, I was shocked they did not bring both of them in. I just thought there's the upside of doing a counter strategy seemed, especially when the 25 lap delta thing was basically guaranteed because it was on the 7th lap. I was like, the only bad thing that could happen is you double stack and it's a busy pit lane and they lose position. So if that's the case, just pit Piastri. But then obviously because of this papaya rules, trying to keep things equal thing, I think that's ultimately what ended up messing them up. And I think Andrea Stella's made a bit of a hames of this, and in a way that's 2 weekends in a row where the drivers have been punished by the folks in engineering and working on the car. Like a double DQ last week was crazy. To see them throw this away, especially Piastri, who just could not get back into a podium position. I felt heartbreaking for him because that was his track. He was dominating all weekend. His qualification pace was amazing. He was great on track. There's no papaya rules in Abu Dhabi. Like even if they tried to do it, which I don't think you can when the drivers are literally fighting for the title. Those drivers, I think, are probably past the point of listening to their pit walls.
I mean, it depends. I never get the impression that there's much sourness in the relationship between the two drivers.
No, I agree.
I think there is I think this week you're gonna have to have conversations about if Lando is in a position where he's going to win the title, if basically if Piastri's in a position to help Norris versus Verstappen, I think that's a fair ask because at this point, like we're at the, it's a narrow slot for him to get the win. But this is sort of the moment where you're going to have to work together to make sure you do not fumble this championship away from Norris, from Matt for Norris. I am on the one hand, I woke up thinking about this. On the one hand, I'm incredibly thrilled. The part that I'm so excited because against all odds for how in the bag this thing looked, this has turned into an everything to play for maximum stakes season finale.
Yeah.
On the other hand, like as you were sort of just pointing out, if you're Lando Norris, you had this thing, like you made mistakes early in the year. You righted the ship. You battled back. You have been faultless in like the last third of this campaign. And McLaren, pit wall, and garage have just brought Max into the fight with a very good chance. There's a scenarios thing that the F1 put out that we should talk through a little bit.
Yes.
But basically it is if Lando finishes on the podium, job done. It's over.
Right.
But if he finishes 4th and 5th and Max wins the title.
Yeah.
And so like there's Norris still has the lead. He still has some margin for error, but he needs to stay on that podium. He can't get taken out. And that's the start of this race is going to be terrifying.
Oh,
this is the most important race start in Lando's career.
Can you imagine if Lando this would be the worst version of the race, is if Lando and Verstappen take each other out in the first turn and then we have to sit through does Oscar survive the race? You know what I mean? That would be.
So in that scenario, Piastri basically has to win. Well, I mean, hang on. If he's what are the DNF scenarios? Yeah,
he could come second
if if Lando gets no points, shit. Okay.
Yeah, so that's also possible. I think I'm really excited. Was it 2016 was the year, right, where I think 5 of them could have won it going into it? It was like Button, Alonso.
It was 2010.
2010 was okay. So Button, Vettel, Webber, Hamilton, and maybe Alonso. I forget. And a lot of them were outside chances, right? But you never know in F1. And I think if the 2021 one has taught us anything, it's don't count your chickens until the lady has sung. So the one thing I will say is that no matter who wins the championship, 2 of the drivers are going to be bitterly disappointed. Verstappen. I take it back.
I think Max is playing with house money. He doesn't give a shit. Yeah,
I take it back. Yes, if Max doesn't win it, you know what? He gave them a good scare. That was quite funny. If Lando doesn't win it, he's going to feel awful about the last couple of races. And if Piastri doesn't win it, he's going to feel awful about the last half of this season because he had such a great run earlier on. I think as a fan, no matter who wins, I think it's going to be good.
This has been tremendous, and I again, a lot of this is down to the fact that I think McLaren, by trying to keep the fight even, has certainly made it interesting. And here's the thing: I think there's going to be a lot of discourse about the papaya rules caused all this. I don't think that's true. I think I do think there's an argument. I made it earlier while I was on the call with Drew. The reason they got the decision so wrong in Qatar is that they were terrified of favoring one driver over the other with strategy. Fundamentally, I think that was probably the thing that contributed to the catastrophe. But Vegas wasn't papaya rules. Vegas was just a screw up. And Elizabeth Blackstock on her blog, Deadly Passions, Terrible Joys, wrote about her theory is that McLaren started focusing on 2026 development really early in the season. So they left their car as kind of a sitting duck, which I think performance has borne out. That car just has it's no longer the fastest car in the grid by any measure. So they kind of lost that advantage as they were sort of planning for the future and counting this campaign as being in the bag. I think it wasn't their decisions to not favor either driver that sort of led them to this point. It was strategic decisions about car development, and then it was miscues, on their operational side of the race weekend. And I think there's going to be a lot of discourse about how the papaya rules have caused this embarrassment, but fundamentally, I think this is more about the fortunes of war turned against McLaren, and they made the mistakes, with car setup and development that you couldn't afford to make with Max lurking in the background. This is, I already brought up Bill Belichick at one point during this race, but Max is kind of a Tom Brady figure. You're in the final 2 minutes. There's a different guy who shows up. It's a midnight in F1 season. That is where this, you do not want this guy to still be in the game.
And I think you alluded to this a few weeks ago. If Max wins this championship, it will have been his best championship. He had to fight for this one. He basically got handed the 2021 one by Michael Massey. In the end, he did a great fight in that, and there was great battles and incidents like in Silverstone, of course, but it wasn't really his championship until
there's an asterisk.
Always will be an asterisk on that one. And hey, wait, swings and roundabouts. Hamilton's first win, he was a fluke because Timo Glock slowed down on the second last turn. You know what I mean? This stuff happens. The past 3 years, he's been largely dominant. So it's not the same.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's kind of walked them. He's been much better in the car. He's had teammates who can't control the Red Bull, and the Red Bull's been dominant. This year, he was not in the fastest car for maybe any of this season, probably, and maybe the first couple of weeks they were competitive, but yeah, he's had to scrap it out, and yeah, my preference would be to see Piastri win it. My next one would probably be Norris. No, it would be Norris, but if Max won it, chapeau.
There's a part of me that this is the most I've ever been excited about the idea of Max winning.
Yes,
because it was such an impossible feat. But early in the season, those races he was stealing, the fact that in a car that was not competitive, he was eking out podiums and just getting maximum points. And I think they're all worthy winners. I think the big advantage Norris that Max has is that he has been through this crucible now before. And Norris had a bit of the crucible last year where the car was clearly better and he found himself in with a shot of the title fight, but he didn't really answer the moment and didn't sort of put together the races that needed to make a really serious title contention. And he came into this year looking really shaky at clutch moments and then sort of rallied. Piastri is interesting because he looked so flawless, just always collected again, maximized the potential of the car. And, as that because he's sort of a low affect guy, that led to this sort of Iceman reputation, but that was easy to overlook. He's a young driver early in his career, and it is one thing to look the part of being cool, calm, and collected, and it's another thing to be there on the inside as the season goes along. And hey, we might win the championship turns into, dude, you're the front runner. And it's your championship to lose. And he stumbled in the face of that, particularly as the car got less competitive. He sort of fell off, and Lando came along. But I think this is sort of the thing where my feeling is Piastri in some ways was always going to be the longest shot to win this thing, because to an extent you kind of have to go through the testing phase and stumble in a fight like this before you're ready for the marathon that is F1, F1 title bid. But yeah, dude, I hope it's a good race at the very least. I am hard pressed to name another race start where there's going to be so much at stake for how it can turn out. I just hope they I hope they all qualify well, and that we don't have a fluky situation where, like, Max isn't back of the grid or something. And I mean, not that you ever count them out, but that it kind of feels like this title fight's mooted before the lights go green.
Yeah, we'll see if Agent Yuki has any say in matters before Red Bull kicks him to the curb, or it's gonna be it's gonna be a wild weekend. I'm looking forward to it. I can't imagine the two McLaren drivers are looking forward to it much at all, but or many other fans. But yeah, it's the way season enders should be. There should be skin in the game by the time the final light goes out on the final race, and there certainly will be a lot this weekend in Abu Dhabi.
All right, well, I think that will do it for today. I assume there's no grimoire with
no, actually, you know what? No, on this grimoire of trips, I did not actually bring the. I'll get my wife to bring it next week. They're in tow, so they'll be joining me out here in the next week or so, and then we're gonna have a real Irish December out here. But no, none today. I'll make sure we have it for the next couple of weeks, though. Yeah. Should I yum us out of here?
Absolutely. Take us away, right, Danny.
I sure will do. Thanks for listening to the podcast, folks. Thanks for listening to this strange little sort of tag team tagging in and out podcast. Please enjoy the last race of the season. We don't often get these title contender ones right till the end. And until the end of the F1 season and next week,